How much did that dress cost? Vanessa Whitmore asked, smiling as though she had offered me a compliment instead of a public execution. 11 other guests sat around the longest dining table I had ever seen, beneath a chandelier bright enough to reveal every crack in a person's confidence. For one strange second, nobody moved. A silver fork hovered above a porcelain plate. Ice shifted inside a crystal glass. Somewhere behind me, a server released a careful breath. I looked down at the black dress I had worn to my father's funeral 3 years earlier. It was simple, high neckline, long sleeves, $29 from a department store clearance rack in Newark. It was also the best dress I owned. I do not remember, I said. Vanessa's smile sharpened. She sat near the head of the table beside an empty chair reserved for her fiancé, Ethan Cole, the chief executive officer of Cole Meridian Group, and the man who had invited me to dinner without explaining to anyone why. That inexpensive? She asked. Several guests lowered their eyes to their plates. Margaret Cole, Ethan's mother, adjusted the pearl bracelet around her wrist, but said nothing. Grant Holloway, the company's chief financial officer, lifted his wine and studied me over the rim of his glass. He was the only person in the room who did not appear embarrassed. That mattered. Men like Grant never wasted an expression. Vanessa, Margaret said softly. Claire is our guest. Of course she is. Vanessa leaned back. Her cream-colored dress probably cost more than my car. I'm only trying to get to know her. Ethan has been so mysterious. Her eyes returned to me. You work in accounting, correct? Financial analysis. Is there a difference? A small laugh moved around the table. Not cruel enough for anyone to challenge. Not kind enough for anyone to stop. I folded my hands in my lap and felt the edge of the old flash drive inside my purse. My father had hidden it beneath the bottom drawer of his desk. I had found it 6 months after his death, wrapped inside a faded receipt and labeled with 3 words in his handwriting. Do not trust them. I had spent 2 years learning who them meant. Tonight, 3 of those people were sitting within 12 feet of me. Vanessa gestured toward the silverware beside my plate. The smaller fork is for the salad. I know. I only mentioned it because you looked uncertain. I had not looked uncertain. I had been studying the place card in front of her. The Whitmore Cole Foundation logo had been printed in gold across the top. A tiny production number ran along the bottom edge, almost hidden by the card's thick backing. Most people would have dismissed it as a printer's code. I had seen the same sequence inside invoices connected to a transfer of $2.4 million that had disappeared from Cole Meridian 3 months earlier. I reached for my water instead of the wine. The glass was cold against my fingers. What exactly do you do for Ethan? Vanessa asked. I review things that people prefer not to have reviewed. Grant's thumb stopped against the face of his watch. Only for a second. Then it began moving again. I noticed everything. That was why Ethan had hired me. Not publicly. Not through his company's finance department. He had contacted me through a private attorney after $18 million vanished across 37 transactions without triggering a single meaningful internal alert. He believed the problem might be a weakness in the accounting software, a careless employee, or a failure in the approval process. Something technical. Something clean enough to repair without shaking the foundation of the company. He had authorized me to review both the transactions and the security controls surrounding them through an independent outside team. I had accepted because of my father, although Ethan did not know that yet. He knew only that I had traced money through 3 layers of shell companies for a federal contractor the year before. He knew I was discreet. He knew I charged less than the major firms. He did not know that I had recognized one of the vendor names before he finished our first meeting. That sounds dramatic, Vanessa said. Accounting usually is not. Neither is theft, I replied. Until someone notices. The room became quieter. Grant placed his glass down with careful precision. Is theft tonight's dinner topic? He asked. His voice was warm, almost fatherly. He had advised Ethan since Ethan was 22. Business magazines called him the architect behind the Cole empire. My father had called him something else in his private notes. The man with clean hands. Ethan mentioned a discrepancy, Margaret said. A temporary discrepancy, Grant corrected. Our auditors are addressing it. Are they? I asked. Grant met my eyes. His were pale gray and perfectly calm. I am certain your experience has taught you that large corporations sometimes produce confusing numbers. Numbers are rarely confused. I tilted my head. People are. Vanessa released an exaggerated sigh. This is an engagement dinner, not a deposition. Then perhaps Ethan should not have invited an investigator, I said. Her expression changed. Surprise first, then calculation, then anger disguised as amusement. Investigator, Margaret repeated. Before I could answer, the dining room doors opened. Ethan Cole walked in carrying the cold air of the November night with him. He was 6 feet 2 inches of controlled authority, dressed in a dark charcoal suit without a tie, his black hair pushed back as though he had run a hand through it during the drive. Every conversation stopped. That was Ethan's real power. He never asked the room to become silent. It simply did. His gaze found Vanessa, then Margaret, then me. He noticed my chair near the service entrance. He noticed the untouched wine. He noticed the smile Vanessa was still wearing. I apologize for being late, he said. There was another problem at the office. Another discrepancy? I asked. Grant looked at his watch. Vanessa stood and kissed Ethan's cheek, keeping one hand on his arm. Your analyst has been entertaining us, she said. She is very confident. Ethan's eyes remained on me. Claire usually has a reason. Does she have a reason for insulting your guests? Vanessa asked. I have not insulted anyone. I opened my purse and removed a folded copy of the transfer summary. Not yet. The paper made a soft sound when I placed it beside my plate. Ethan's expression tightened. Grant's did not. That worried me more. Hey. Server stepped forward to refill Vanessa's wine. Vanessa moved her elbow, and the red liquid spilled across the white tablecloth. It spread beneath her place card, dark and glossy in the candlelight. She gasped and pushed back her chair. Moisture seeped into the card's layered backing. The lower edge separated, revealing a second production code printed inside the paper stock. My heart struck once. Hard. I knew that sequence. I had seen it on the final page of my father's notebook, written beside the date he had been accused of falsifying company records. I reached across the table and lifted the card before Vanessa could stop me. What are you doing? She demanded. Ethan stepped closer. Claire. I stared at the number while Grant's watch ticked in the silence. For 3 years, I had wondered whether my father had left me a warning, a name, or nothing more than the frightened theory of a ruined man. Now I knew. I lifted my eyes toward Ethan. Someone at this table has been stealing from your company, I said. Then I looked at Vanessa's place card. And that person has been using your fiancé's foundation to move the money. Nobody reached for the stained card. Nobody looked at the wine spreading across the linen. Every face turned toward me, but I watched Ethan. His expression did not break. That was the first thing I had learned about him during our private meetings. Surprise made him quieter. Anger made him still. Explain, he said. Vanessa stepped between us before I could answer. There is nothing to explain. She sees a printing number and decides my foundation is some criminal operation? I did not say your foundation created the money, I replied. I said someone used it to move the money. That is the same accusation dressed in cheaper language. Her hand tightened around the back of her chair. The diamond on her finger flashed beneath the chandelier. Ethan moved toward the empty chair beside her, but did not sit. Claire, where did that number come from? I turned the damp card toward him. It is part of an internal trail marker. The same sequence appears inside invoice numbers, printer orders, and vendor references connected to the missing payments. Whoever created the system changed company names and payment amounts, but kept this sequence to reconcile the transactions privately. Grant offered a patient smile. That is an imaginative theory. You recognize the sequence? I asked. I recognize ordinary accounting codes. Large organizations use thousands of them. Then perhaps you can explain why this one appears on payments sent to 3 transportation companies with no trucks, no employees, and no operating addresses. His smile remained, but his fingers touched his watch. Once. Twice. Vanessa looked at Ethan, waiting for him to end the conversation. This is absurd, she said. The Whitmore Cole Foundation is audited every year. By Harlan and Pierce, I said. Lucas Reed, the head of Cole Meridian's legal department, lowered his gaze. It was a small movement. Almost nothing. I saw it anyway. Yes, Vanessa answered. A respected firm. A firm Grant recommended 6 years ago. Grant folded his hands. Because they are respected, and because one of their senior partners attended college with your brother. The atmosphere in the room changed. Margaret looked from Grant to me. Is that true? They attended the same university, Grant said. 30 years ago. That does not establish misconduct. No, I agreed. It establishes access. Ethan finally sat. He He placed both hands flat on the table. Start at the beginning. Vanessa turned toward him. You cannot be serious. I am serious about $18 million. And you are willing to let a stranger insult me in my own home because of it. This is my mother's home, Ethan said quietly. Margaret did not smile, but something in her eyes softened. Vanessa sat down. Her posture remained perfect. Her control did not. Fine, she said. Let Claire perform. I returned the place card to the table. 3 months ago, Ethan asked me to examine payments that had passed every internal review. The amounts were different. The vendor names were different. The approval dates were different. That was deliberate. Repetition creates patterns, and patterns attract attention. Grant nodded as though I were a student giving a classroom answer. Basic fraud analysis. Then you know what comes next. You search for what the transactions share. Exactly. I removed a thin folder from my purse. All 37 payments were processed within 48 hours of major company events. Board meetings. Acquisitions. Earnings reports. Moments when senior leadership was distracted and review deadlines were shortened. Ethan looked at Grant. Why was I not told? Because correlation is not proof, Grant said. I did not ask whether it was proof. I asked why I was not told. Silence settled over the table. This time, it belonged to Ethan. Grant leaned back. The internal audit team saw no reason to elevate incomplete speculation. Your internal audit team reports through your office, I said. Indirectly. Through 2 executives you hired. Are you suggesting I control every conclusion they reach? I am asking whether they understand what happens when they reach a conclusion you dislike. Lucas shifted in his chair. I turned toward him. When did your department first review North Harbor Transit? His face tightened. I would need to check. You signed the vendor authorization. I signed hundreds of documents. This one was approved on March 17th. Then I would need to review the file. You were in Phoenix that week. Lucas blinked. Ethan looked at him. Were you? Yes, but electronic approvals are routine. The approval came from your office computer in Manhattan, I said. Not your laptop. Not your secure remote account. Your office computer. Lucas opened his mouth, then closed it. Vanessa gave a short laugh, without humor. So now Lucas is stealing from Ethan? I did not say that. You keep saying that after accusing everyone. I am not accusing everyone. I am watching who answers the question and who attacks the person asking it. Her face lost color. Margaret dismissed the household staff with a small motion of her hand. The doors closed behind them, leaving 13 of us beneath the chandelier. I could hear the rain against the windows. I could also hear Grant's watch. Tick, tick, tick. Let us make this simple, I said. Did the Whitmore Coal Foundation ever receive money directly from Coal Meridian? No. Vanessa answered immediately. Grant said nothing. Lucas stared at his plate. I turned toward Ethan. The foundation received 4 transfers through a consulting company called Bellwether Strategies. Bellwether received matching amounts from 2 Coal Meridian vendors less than 24 hours earlier. Vanessa shook her head. I do not manage individual deposits. But you signed the annual reports. My financial staff prepared them. Who selected your financial staff? Grant helped us find qualified people, she said. Then she stopped. The warmth disappeared from Grant's expression. I removed a corporate filing from the folder. Bellwether Strategies was formed in Delaware 12 years ago. Old mortgage records and archived registration documents connect its listed manager, Evelyn Grace Mercer, to one person in this room. Vanessa looked confused. Grant did not. His thumb pressed hard against his watch. I looked directly at him. Evelyn Mercer was your mother, Grant. Mercer was her maiden name. Grant's eyes became completely still. Bellwether was created 2 days after my father reported an unauthorized payment carrying the same identifying sequence found on Vanessa's place card. Ethan looked at me. Your father worked for us? He worked for Harborline Freight while Coal Meridian was preparing to acquire it. He found the first version of this system 12 years ago. Grant's voice became quiet. Your father was dismissed for falsifying records. The words reached me across the table with the weight of something I had carried for years. I did not look away. That is what you made everyone believe. I placed my father's old flash drive beside the transfer summary. Its casing was scratched. Its label had faded. It looked painfully small among the crystal and silver. He kept copies. For the first time that evening, Grant stopped touching his watch. I looked directly at Ethan. Do not ask only who had access to the money. Ask who had the authority to decide which honest person would take the blame. Ethan did not touch the flash drive. He stared at it as though the scratched piece of plastic had become the most dangerous object in the room. Around us, the candles continued to burn. The rain continued against the windows. Everything looked unchanged, but the dinner was over. We all knew it. You came here planning this, Vanessa said. Her voice trembled just enough to sound wounded. You allowed me to welcome you while you prepared to accuse my fiancé, my foundation, and one of his oldest friends. You did not welcome me, I said. You measured the price of my dress before you asked my last name. Margaret lowered her eyes. Vanessa pressed one hand to her chest. I made a joke. Perhaps it was unkind, but that does not give you the right to destroy people. Evidence does not destroy people. Choices do. Enough, Ethan said. The single word landed harder than a shout. He looked at me, and for the first time that night, I saw distance in his expression. Not doubt exactly. Something colder. Calculation. He was no longer looking at the woman he had hired. He was looking at a threat to the structure that had kept his world standing. Why did you not tell me your father worked for Harborline Freight? He asked. Because his employment history did not change the transactions. It changed your reason for accepting the assignment. My reason does not change the numbers. Grant leaned forward, his hands folded calmly. It changes how she interprets them. His voice had recovered its warmth. That careful, generous tone men used when they wanted suspicion to sound like wisdom. Claire believes her father was wronged. Grief can make coincidence feel like design. I looked at him. Power can make design look like coincidence. Vanessa turned toward Ethan. She misled you from the beginning. How can you trust anything she brought into this house? Ethan did not answer. His silence should not have hurt me. He was a client. Nothing more. Still, something tightened beneath my ribs. I had expected resistance from Grant. I had expected contempt from Vanessa. I had not expected Ethan to study me as though I were the person who had taken his money. Give me the drive, he said. It is already in front of you. Give me the original documents as well. The originals remain with independent counsel. His jaw tightened. Claire, copies can disappear. Originals are harder to dismiss. Lucas finally looked up. Withholding evidence could create legal complications. So could approving documents from a computer while you were 2,000 miles away. His face flushed, but Ethan raised one hand. This is not helping. No, I said. It is making you uncomfortable. That is different. Vanessa stood so quickly that her chair scraped against the floor. You see how she speaks to you? She has no respect for you. She walked into this house carrying a family grievance and turned our engagement dinner into a trial. There is no public here, Margaret said. Only family. Vanessa looked at her. That is exactly my point. The words remained between them. Margaret's expression changed slightly. Vanessa seemed to realize too late what she had revealed. She reached for Ethan's hand. Send her home. Let Grant and Lucas review whatever she found through the proper channels. The proper channels were sitting at the table. Ethan looked at Vanessa's hand over his, then at Grant, then at me. He was choosing between a truth he had known for less than 1 hour and people he had trusted for years. I saw the decision before he spoke. Leave the drive, he said. My security team will take you home. The room became very quiet. I nodded once. And the investigation? Suspended until an independent firm verifies your findings. Grant lowered his gaze, hiding his relief. Vanessa released a breath. Which firm? I asked. Ethan's eyes narrowed. That will be decided tomorrow. By Grant. By me. Based on whose recommendation? His expression hardened. You have made your point. No, I have made yours. I closed the folder and placed it inside my purse. You hired me because everyone around you is too close to the problem. Now that the problem has a familiar face, you want to return it to the same people. That is not what I said. It is what you are doing. I stood. My chair moved across the floor with a soft sound that seemed louder than it should have. Ethan remained seated. For one foolish second, I waited for him to stop me. He did not. I walked toward the dining room doors, feeling 12 pairs of eyes follow me. My father had once walked out of a conference room like this. Not this house, not this table, but the same silence, the same polished certainty, the same powerful people deciding that the easier story must be the true one. My hand reached the brass handle. Ethan's phone emitted a sharp electronic tone. Lucas's phone sounded a second later. A red warning appeared on the home security panel beside the doors, signaling a protected corporate alert. The chandelier remained bright. Nobody moved. What happened? Ethan asked. Lucas read the message on his screen. The external security monitor detected an unauthorized search inside the internal audit archive. Grant stood more slowly. From outside the company? Lucas continued reading. No. The search came through a company administrative credential. Ethan reached for his own phone. Disable remote access and preserve every active session. The security team has already isolated the archive, Lucas said. Vanessa looked at me. She did this. Her accusation came instantly. Too instantly. She brought that drive into this house, and now the company's system is under attack. Grant turned toward Ethan with measured concern. Do not allow her to leave until this is explained. Ethan's gaze found mine. Claire, I removed my hand from the door. I did not access your system. But you expected this, he said. It was not a question. I expected someone to react. Lucas's fingers moved across his phone. An account searched for a folder reference that does not exist. A deletion command followed 30 seconds later, but the archive had already mirrored to an independent backup. Grant's hand returned to his watch. Tick, tick, tick. Ethan stepped closer to me. How did you know? The transfer summary I placed on the table contained a unique decoy reference. It appeared only on that physical copy. Under the written authorization you gave outside counsel, an independent cybersecurity firm placed a monitored marker in the audit system. If anyone searched for that reference, the firm would preserve the session and alert us. Lucas looked at Ethan. You authorized an external integrity test 3 weeks ago, Ethan said slowly. Through private counsel. I nodded. The person who searched for the decoy knew what had been discussed in this room. The search began 3 minutes after Ethan told me to leave. Grant removed his hand from his watch. That proves only that someone communicated with an employee. Yes, I said. Someone at this table sent information to an employee or used a remote credential personally. Lucas read the new alert. His face lost color. The credential is assigned to the administrative account of the chief financial officer's office. Nobody moved. Vanessa's hand fell away from Ethan's arm. Margaret stared at Grant as though she were seeing a stranger seated in an old friend's chair. Ethan turned toward the man who had helped build his company. Grant. Grant did not answer. I walked back to the table and picked up my father's flash drive. You were right about one thing, Ethan. My father is the reason I accepted this assignment. I held the drive between us. But I did not come here to avenge him. I came here to discover whether the man who inherited the system that ruined him would protect that system once the truth became personal. Ethan looked at the security alert, the people he had chosen over me minutes earlier, and the flash drive in my hand. And what did you decide? He asked. I placed the drive in his palm and closed his fingers around it. I have not decided yet. Ethan kept the flash drive in his closed hand while Lucas contacted the independent security firm. No one spoke. The alert had stopped, but the silence it left behind felt louder. Lucas stood near the table, reading updates with the rigid concentration of a man who had just realized every answer could become evidence. The deletion attempt failed, he said. The independent backup preserved the original files and the full access log. Grant exhaled slowly. Then this entire performance accomplished nothing. It accomplished exactly what I needed, I said. It showed us who panicked. His eyes settled on me. Calm, patient, almost disappointed. Or who understood that you had manipulated the system. Ethan opened his hand and looked at the drive. Can we examine this without connecting it to any company device? Yes. Outside counsel prepared a clean laptop for the review. It is sealed in your home office. Ethan looked at Lucas. Bring it. Lucas returned several minutes later carrying a sealed computer and a portable projector from the emergency document kit. 10 minutes earlier, the table had held roasted chicken, crystal glasses, and flowers arranged by someone paid to make wealth look effortless. Now the plates had been moved aside. Documents, phones, and Vanessa's damaged place card covered the white linen. I sat across from Ethan while Lucas opened the sealed computer and connected the projector without using the house network. Grant remained beside the fireplace. Vanessa stood several feet from him, although she seemed unaware of how much that choice revealed. Margaret took the chair at Ethan's right. She looked tired now. Not old. Tired in the way people look when memory begins rearranging itself around an unwanted truth. The drive contains 6 folders, I said. I organized them by date using the records my father preserved and the transactions I traced. Ethan inserted the drive. 6 dates appeared on the screen. February 9th, June 21st, September 4th, December 12th, April 17th, August 3rd. His face changed. What are those dates? Lucas asked. Ethan answered without looking away. The day my father died. The day I became chief executive officer. The day we announced the Harborline acquisition. The day I proposed to Vanessa. The day our largest investor renewed its commitment. The day we completed the Meridian merger. Grant shook his head faintly. Important dates are easy to find. Anyone with access to company history could build a dramatic story around them. That is why my father did not organize the folders, I said. I did. I opened the first file. A transfer authorization appeared beside a calendar record. On February 9th, 12 years ago, senior leadership was focused on Richard Cole's death. Review procedures were shortened. A payment of $680,000 moved from a subsidiary into a consulting company that had existed for 19 days. I opened the second folder. On June 21st, when Ethan became chief executive officer, another payment moved through a different vendor. The amount changed. The destination changed. The timing did not. Ethan stared at the dates. Every major event. Every moment when you were least likely to review the details. I displayed all 6 transactions side by side. Each had a different vendor name, approval chain, and dollar amount. The identifying sequence remained, hidden inside invoice numbers, printing orders, and internal reference fields. Someone built the system around your life, I said. Not merely the company calendar. Your life. Vanessa folded her arms. And somehow this points to me. The 4th transaction does. I enlarged the file dated December 12th. On the day Ethan proposed, $1.8 million moved through Bellwether Strategies. 3 days later, the foundation received the same amount, divided among 4 donor identities. That proves the foundation received money, she said. It does not prove that I knew where it came from. You signed the donor acknowledgement letters. My staff prepared them. You added handwritten messages to 2 of them. Her eyes sharpened. I thank donors personally. That is not suspicious. One donor was listed as an 87-year-old woman living in Sarasota, Florida. People retire. She had been dead for 14 months. Margaret drew in a quiet breath. Vanessa looked toward Grant. It lasted less than a second. It was enough. I placed copies of the donor letters on the table. The signatures were copied from earlier donations. The addresses belonged to vacant properties. The telephone numbers routed to an answering service paid by Bellwether. Ethan looked at Vanessa. Did you know? I knew there were accounting irregularities, she said. Her voice became softer, more careful. Grant explained that the foundation sometimes received money through intermediaries because prominent donors wanted privacy. Grant's posture did not change. That is common among high-profile donors. Not when the donors are dead, I said. Vanessa ignored me. Ethan, I was protecting the foundation. I was protecting your name. Grant said the transfers came from private legacy accounts your father had created. He said exposing them could damage the company and embarrass your family. When did he tell you that? Ethan asked. She looked down at her ring. 2 years ago. The room seemed to contract around those words. You knew for 2 years, Ethan said. I knew something looked unusual. I did not know anyone was stealing. You knew enough to conceal it. I knew enough to be afraid. For the first time that night, Vanessa's composure cracked. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. You do not understand what it is like to enter this family and know that one mistake can erase you. Grant said the money had already moved. He said returning it would trigger an investigation, destroy the foundation, and make every newspaper call me a fraud. So you signed the reports, I said. I trusted someone who had advised this family for decades. No, Ethan said. You trusted the answer that protected you. Vanessa turned toward him. I protected us. You protected the engagement, the foundation, the image. His voice lowered. Did you ever protect the truth? She had no answer. Grant stepped away from the fireplace. This is becoming unfair. Vanessa made administrative decisions based on professional advice. If mistakes occurred, responsibility belongs to the financial staff. Which staff? I asked. The staff you selected? Qualified professionals. Professionals whose work passed through companies connected to you. He smiled without warmth. You keep drawing circles and calling them chains. Then let us break the circle. I displayed another document. Vanessa did not design the payment schedule. She could not have known which events would distract Ethan years before she joined the foundation. Grant's expression remained controlled, but the ticking of his watch seemed suddenly sharp. That means she was not the beginning, Ethan said. No, I looked at Vanessa. She discovered part of the system and chose to benefit from her silence. Then I looked at Grant. Someone else built it. Grant buttoned his jacket. And you believe that person was me? I believe you knew which transactions Ethan would never review. Vanessa closed her eyes. Ethan saw it. So did I. Who told you which dates were safe? He asked her. She remained silent. Vanessa. His voice was barely above a whisper. She opened her eyes and looked at Grant. The room followed her gaze. Grant stood beneath the portrait of Ethan's father, perfectly composed, his hands resting at his sides. Then he smiled. Thomas Bennett asked the same question, he said. My father's name in his mouth forced the air from my lungs. Grant looked directly at me, and it cost him everything. His words should have broken me. Instead, everything inside me became still. For years, I had imagined the person who ruined my father as faceless and distant, hidden behind legal language and sealed records. Now he stood beneath a portrait in a tailored suit, speaking about my father's life as though it had been a minor expense. What did you do to him? I asked. Grant's smile faded, but his voice remained controlled. Your father made a mistake. He found information he did not understand. Instead of raising questions through an orderly process, he threatened to expose incomplete financial arrangements. He raised the question with you. Exactly. Grant looked toward Ethan as though his answer should have impressed him. Thomas Bennett was a mid-level accountant at Harborline Freight, while Cole Meridian was preparing to acquire it. He found irregular transfers connected to temporary financing structures. He assumed theft. There were shell companies, I said. There were emergency measures. Grant walked toward the table with the confidence of a man returning to familiar ground. When Richard Cole died, this company was not an empire. It was a collection of debts wearing an expensive name. Banks were preparing to restrict credit. Investors were preparing to leave. Thousands of employees could have lost their jobs. Ethan's face hardened. You told me the company was stable. Because I made it appear stable long enough for revenue to recover. Grant pointed toward the documents. I delayed losses. I shifted obligations. I created outside vendors that absorbed expenses the company could not report without collapsing investor confidence. I did what the board was too frightened to do and what you were too young to understand. That does not explain $18 million, Ethan said. It explains why the system existed. Not where the money went, I said. I opened the final financial summary. $7.4 million moved through consulting fees into a family trust controlled by Grant. $6.1 million reached the Whitmore Cole Foundation. The remaining $4.5 million circulated through shell vendors to cover earlier discrepancies and keep the false balances from collapsing. Grant looked at the screen. Those consulting payments were compensation for risk management and restructuring work. Compensation that was never disclosed to the board, Lucas said. Grant turned toward him. You are not qualified to interpret those agreements without context. I am qualified to recognize undisclosed self-dealing. Lucas's voice was quieter than mine, but it carried. Ethan looked at Grant. You did not only hide losses. You paid yourself. I preserved a company that now employs more than 20,000 people. You preserved your position inside it. Grant's voice sharpened. You became chief executive officer at 29 because I kept the doors open long enough for you to inherit them. Every magazine cover, every acquisition, every speech about discipline and vision happened because I protected you from facts that would have destroyed your confidence. Ethan stared at him. You built a system that depended on my ignorance. Your ignorance was useful. The honesty of the sentence moved through the room like cold air. Vanessa looked away. Margaret's hand tightened around her pearl bracelet. I thought of my father sitting at our kitchen table long after midnight, surrounded by papers he refused to explain. I remembered the way he stopped answering the telephone. The way neighbors became careful around us after the accusations appeared. The way he carried shame for something he had not done because powerful people had repeated the lie until it sounded official. You blamed him, I said. Grant looked at me. Your father placed himself in an impossible position. You placed him there. He refused the separation agreement because it required him to accept responsibility. It required confidentiality. Those are not the same thing. They become similar when a family has bills to pay. My breath caught. Grant saw it. Your mother's medical insurance came through his employment. Her treatment was expensive. Your father understood that if he signed the agreement, private coverage would continue for another year. The candles had burned lower, leaving small pools of wax around their bases. I could hear the rain, the clock in the hallway, and my own pulse. You used my mother's treatment to purchase his silence. I offered him a practical settlement. You made honesty unaffordable. Ethan stepped between us, not to shield me, but to face Grant directly. Did my father know? Grant's expression changed. Not guilt. Calculation. Richard knew the company was under pressure. He did not request operational details. Margaret stood. That is not true. Everyone turned toward her. She looked at Grant with a grief that seemed older than the evening. Richard asked why the numbers never matched. I heard him. 2 weeks before he died, he told you he wanted an outside audit. Grant's jaw tightened. Richard was under enormous pressure. He was afraid of what you had created, Margaret said. I did not understand it then. I understand it now. Grant looked around the table, measuring how much loyalty remained. You can judge decisions made during a crisis because you survived the crisis. That is the privilege of people who benefited from them. Vanessa stepped forward. You told me the money came from private reserves. You accepted that explanation because it financed your foundation. Her face went pale. You said the transfers were lawful. You stopped asking after the first one. Ethan looked at her. How much did the foundation receive? She hesitated. Just over $6 million. For programs that help thousands of people, Vanessa said quickly. Scholarships, shelters, community clinics. The money accomplished a great deal of good. Good work. Does not clean stolen money, I said. It gives the person spending it a better story. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. You think this is easy for me? No. I think it remained easy enough for 2 years. Her face tightened. You came here wanting revenge. I came here wanting proof. Now you have it. What do you want? An apology? Money? Your father's name on a building? I placed my hand beside the documents. I want every employee falsely blamed for these transactions cleared. I want every affected family repaid. I want an independent investigation that reports to neither Ethan, Grant, Vanessa, nor anyone else in this room. I want all relevant records preserved, and I want the foundation to suspend every payment until its accounts are reviewed. Lucas looked toward Ethan. A public investigation will affect lenders, shareholders, and active acquisitions. We must handle disclosure carefully. Carefully cannot mean quietly, I said. It means lawfully, Lucas replied. Lawful action should have started 12 years ago. Ethan stood at the head of the table, surrounded by the remains of a dinner he had arrived too late to save. His company, his family, his oldest advisor, and his future wife had become parts of the same question. Grant saw his hesitation. Think carefully, he said. This can still be contained. Vanessa resigns from the foundation. I retire. The company restores the money. No employees lose their jobs. No investors panic. The company survives. And my father remains guilty, I said. Grant did not look at me. History is rarely fair. Only when people like you write it. Ethan closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, he looked at me. If I disclose everything, the board could remove me. Yes. The share price could fall. Yes. Thousands of employees could face uncertainty. Yes. His voice became quieter. Tell me exactly how much truth this company can survive. I looked at the stained tablecloth, my father's flash drive, Vanessa's damaged place card, and Grant's silent watch. Then I met Ethan's eyes. All of it, I said, or it deserves to die. Ethan did not answer immediately. He looked around the table as though the room had become a map of every decision he had avoided. Grant stood near Richard Cole's portrait, still certain that survival would matter more than honesty. Vanessa held the back of her chair. Margaret watched her son without speaking. Lucas stared at the documents as though they had already become court exhibits. Ethan placed his phone on the table. Lucas, contact the board chair, he said. Schedule an emergency meeting for 7 tomorrow morning. Issue an immediate legal hold on every company record connected to Bellwether Strategies, North Harbor Transit, Harborline Freight, and the Foundation. Grant's expression tightened. That would be reckless. Ethan continued. Disable Grant's access to all company systems. Suspend every Cole Meridian payment to the Foundation. Notify the Foundation's independent directors that no further disbursements should occur until counsel reviews the accounts. Lucas nodded. What should I tell outside counsel? Find a firm with no previous relationship to this company, my family, Grant, or Harlan and Pierce. Tell them the chief executive officer is requesting an independent investigation into fraud, false reporting, self-dealing, and failures of executive oversight. Grant stepped forward. You are handing your enemies a weapon. No, Ethan said. I am taking away yours. The silence that followed felt different from every silence before it. It was not fear. It was the sound of a decision becoming real. Vanessa moved toward him. Please think about what this means for us. Ethan looked at the ring on her hand. You had 2 years to think about that. I was afraid. So was Claire's father. Vanessa's eyes filled. I never harmed him. You benefited from the lie that did. Her hand dropped. You are ending our future because of her, she asked. No, Ethan said. I am ending it because when you found the truth, you asked how it could protect you. She looked at me, but I felt no victory. Only exhaustion. You wanted this, she said. You wanted my place. I never wanted your chair, I replied. I wanted my father's name back. Vanessa slowly removed her engagement ring and placed it on the table beside Ethan's untouched plate. The quiet click against the wood sounded final. Margaret opened the dining room doors and asked a staff member to prepare a car. Vanessa left without looking back. Grant remained. You cannot strip me of authority based on one consultant's accusation, he said. Lucas lifted his phone. The access logs, false vendors, undisclosed trust payments, and attempted deletion establish sufficient grounds to preserve evidence and suspend your access pending investigation. You are company counsel. My responsibility is to the company, not to you. Grant looked at Ethan. I made you. Ethan's face did not change. Then you should have taught me better. 2 security officers appeared at the doorway. Ethan instructed them to collect Grant's company telephone, laptop, and access cards, then escort him from the property. Grant straightened his jacket and looked at me one last time. Your father believed the truth would save him. It did, I said. It simply arrived late. At 7 the next morning, Cole Meridian's board met in a conference room 30 floors above Midtown Manhattan. By 9, Grant had been placed on administrative leave, and Ethan had voluntarily stepped away from daily management while the independent review proceeded. By noon, the company released a public statement confirming credible evidence of financial misconduct and a full external investigation. The stock fell 11% before the closing bell. Reporters filled the sidewalk outside headquarters. Commentators questioned Ethan's judgment, his leadership, and whether the company could survive. He did not hide behind a prepared answer. He stood before the cameras and admitted that misconduct had continued because the people at the top had mistaken loyalty for accountability. He named my father, Thomas Bennett. He said the company had found serious evidence that Thomas had been falsely blamed and promised that the official record would be corrected when the independent review was complete. I watched from the back of the press room, wearing the same black dress. Nobody asked what it cost. The investigation lasted 5 months. It confirmed that Grant had directed the shell company network, concealed losses, diverted money into a family trust, manipulated internal reviews, and used Thomas Bennett's credentials to create a false trail. Grant resigned before the board could complete its removal process, but resignation did not erase the evidence. Vanessa stepped down from the foundation, which entered independent management and returned the funds it could trace. Lucas cooperated fully and admitted that fear of challenging senior executives had caused him to ignore warning signs. Ethan sold part of his personal shareholding to establish a restitution fund without touching employee retirement accounts or operating reserves. Thomas Bennett's name was cleared in every official company record. A letter of exoneration arrived at my apartment on a quiet Tuesday morning. I placed it beside his photograph and sat there while sunlight moved across the floor. I had imagined that moment for years. I thought justice would feel louder. It felt like breathing after holding my breath too long. 6 weeks later, Ethan asked me to meet him at the Cole house. The dining room looked almost the same. New white linen. New flowers. No place card waited near the service entrance. Ethan stood beside the chair at the head of the table, but did not sit. I want you to lead a new office of corporate integrity, he said. It would report directly to me. Then my answer is no. Surprise crossed his face. You have not heard the offer. You just told me the problem. He became quiet. This time he listened. The office cannot report to you, I continued. It must report to an independent committee of the board. Employees need a direct reporting channel that no executive can close. Every accusation must be reviewed without regard to title, family, or history, including accusations against me, especially those. Ethan walked to the window and looked out over the city. Months earlier, that silence would have felt like control. Now it felt like thought. The board will resist. Then you will discover whether you changed the company or merely survived the scandal. He turned back toward me. You never make anything easy. Easy is how Grant lasted 12 years. Ethan nodded. Your conditions are accepted. I looked at the table where Vanessa had tried to make me feel small, where Grant had treated my father's life like an accounting adjustment, and where Ethan had nearly chosen comfort over truth. There is one more condition. Name it. My father's settlement cannot include a confidentiality clause. Every employee deserves to know what happened. Ethan held my gaze. Agreed. He pulled out a chair for me. Not the chair beside him. The chair across from him. Equal distance. Equal view. I sat down. I used to think power was the ability to make a room silent, he said. Most powerful people do. What do you think it is? I looked at my father's letter, then at the man who had finally chosen to risk his empire rather than protect its lie. Power is what you do after the quiet people finally speak. Ethan Cole still owned the building, the company, and nearly every name engraved on that table. But he no longer believed ownership made him right. I had entered his home wearing the least expensive dress in the room. I left with nothing money could buy. I left with my father's truth, my own place at the table, and the knowledge that dignity does not need permission from power. It only needs someone brave enough to refuse the seat power assigns.